Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a torta with some snack habits. Bye up, bye up. Let's get to that intro. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directing the direction of the dope content that the gun stays kicking. And I appreciate the support. I'm very humbled by it. So it's confirmed. It is now confirmed. The uncle of Little Toro, the rapper who was unalived in Concord, California, will no longer be facing charges. All charges have been dropped, dismissed, per the district attorney. Now, there must be a big reason. They must know something that everyone else doesn't know in order to just dismiss this case when Little Toro, the Norteno rapper, was fatally stabbed to death at his grandfather's home in Concord. Now, when this first news broke of him being stabbed, there was a lot of he said, she said that went on. There was a lot of people running around spreading rumors. I, in fact, have talked to the family numerous occasions. In fact, I have an interview set up with this primo that I was supposed to do the other day, but everything got sidetracked. I got a little busy, so that one was on me. But it's something that we've been setting up, which is basically going to tell you all the details, everything about Little Toro from the date of his birth all the way into the day of his demise, right? I'm not going to sit here and disrespect that guy. That man is gone. Even though me and him didn't see eye to eye on a lot of different things, there's a big story behind the scenes that needs to be told. And I would definitely be bringing you the interview to tell you that, right? But just recently, as of yesterday, the district attorney in Concord, California, decided that they were no longer going to press charges on Little Toro's uncle. Now, if you recall that day that the news broke, it was broke by Instagram. Someone on Instagram said Little Toro was unalived. He was killed brutally. There was a lot of naysayers, a lot of people that didn't want to believe it, nor did they believe it, but it became true. Now, the story behind it, the reasoning behind it, why? Why did this happen to Little Toro? Now, if any of us watch Little Toro, his ups and downs were documented pretty well on his channel on YouTube. This man he was going through a lot, okay? He was going through a breakup with his wife. He was going through displacement at home, being kicked out of his home, being on the streets, homelessness, living in tents, living in rooms in the Tenderloin district in San Francisco. He was going through a lot of bridges being burned with friends, with family. Of course, he could not grasp and get an understanding of why he was no longer welcomed in the Norteno movement. You know, basically being pushed away and being told that he was no good. You know, this is a rapper that became pretty prominent in the 2000s, was having it his way, was probably the hottest Norteno rapper in Northern California at the time, and everything crashed. Everything crashed and burned. You know, a lot of people choose to believe those stories that are out there about his transgressions and things that he did with the minor. But I'm here to tell you, it was more than that. I'm not saying that never happened. I'm not saying that there was untruth to that, because a lot of people were telling the same story. Even Little Toro did some documentation on that story and explained exactly what happened that night. But more so than that, the turning point in his life is when he was told he was no longer welcomed in his neighborhood and around the Norteno cause. That broke his heart. That seemed to be the catalyst of his demise. And from that point on, man, the Little Toro that we listened to as a rapper, that everyone respected, that everyone showed love to, no longer existed. Not in the minds of everyone else. In his mind, most definitely. He was still the king of Northern California when it came to the rap scene. He was still an active rocking Norteno. But to everyone else, this was just an illusion, right? You know, it couldn't be. Now, I had the privilege, like I said, of sitting down and interviewing Little Toro at some point in time. Now, this was prior to any allegations that I had ever heard of. And I was welcomed to his home. And it was a lot of respect. It was a lot of, you know, just good stuff that happened, good conversation. And I could tell you, man, that man was happy to have a friend. He was happy to be around someone. And I took him back there. We reminisced. We told those stories. We talked about people that we knew, both of us knew. And all that, man. And one thing I could say about Little Toro was there was always a place in my heart for him. You know, even when I heard that he had these bad charges and all this, I didn't necessarily want to believe everything that was being said. You know, you don't want to believe things because it's like, I respect this man, I rock with them. He showed me a different person than what people are saying, and it's hard to believe stuff like that. So I'll just let that man tell his story, and I'll let that man and let people resonate on it. And that's how I felt about it. Now, of course, I did distance myself just based on my philosophies and my beliefs, my morals, and the way I rock, man. And that caused some type of controversy between me and him. And there was some back and forth, some videos that were made, some disrespectful things being said. And I'm here to say, man, at the end of the day, it was just for social media. I said what I had to say. He said what he had to say, and we pushed. We pushed. I didn't wish death upon that man. Whatever he wished upon me, it never materialized. So we just kept doing our thing from a distance. Now, I do remember doubling back even after all that bullshit, man, and him reaching out to me and me helping his family just based upon, I know about hardship. I know about struggle. You know, the way I was laced up, the way I was taught. You help anyone that's in need. So I tried to do the best that I can for his family. Not necessarily for him, but for his familia, his lady, his kids at the time, because they were going through some transgressions and they were going through some struggle, right? Now, the news that broke yesterday is that the Concord District Attorney decided that they did not want to press charges on little Toro's uncle. Now, let me explain to you about his uncle, and let me explain to you about the relationship between Toro and his uncle. Before people jump to conclusions and believe that they were some close-knit family, that this was his uncle he grew up with his whole life, that's not the truth. In fact, little Toro had just met this man not even a week prior. Okay, little Toro was out living on the streets. If you remember, right before his death, man, he went to Hawaii. He was doing some videos. He was acting pretty erratic, irregular. He went to East LA, to the Los Angeles area. He was disrespecting Southsiders. He was running around town with a Mongolian in a red t-shirt. And he was being highly disrespectful to people that would be considered his opposition. He was going in stores. He was yelling at fucking pedestrians and civilians. I mean, he was pretty much on the decline. His mind state was very erratic and didn't seem right, okay? That was a man that was definitely crashing, and he was crashing fast, unfortunately, for his family. To have to watch those videos, that I think they sure get an understanding of exactly what was going on with little Toro at that time. He was in a bad place, okay? He was in a bad place in the world, and he was in a bad place in his mind. And anyone that watched him, that knew him, that have met him, that knows the type of person he is, he was very loving, caregiving, just a dude that would give you the shirt off his back, but wasn't no punk, wasn't no sucker, man. Didn't run around making threats idly, right? Was willing to get off where he was mad at. That's just his nature. That was his story. And, you know, you could tell by the last months of his life, it was getting worse. You know, he wasn't making no sense in some of the things he was doing and saying. And it started to involve where in the past, little Toro would make threats or accusations or hit up gang members. It got to the point where it was now becoming civilians and people that didn't deserve what he was throwing out there. So this uncle comes into play. The reason why this uncle was even around was little Toro did not have a place to go, a place to live, and his grandfather extended an olive branch. His grandfather extended his hand and said, "Hey, mijo, come here to my house. Get off the streets, get your shit together, you know, start going to church, start doing the right thing." And I think little Toro was happy because he was very close with his grandfather. They had a great relationship. And I think little Toro was finally happy that he was around his family, his backbone, you know, his support system. And he moved in. Now, upon him moving in, there was someone else living there, which was his uncle, his estranged uncle, meaning he had never met this man. This man was a white man who was related to him by his grandfather's blood, but he had never met him at all. Didn't grow up with them, didn't really know who he was. So knowing the way that little Toro was, he was very leery and very aware of his surroundings, but at the same time, very suspicious. You know, having had conversations with him, I could tell you his suspicions went pretty extraordinary. He talked about 5G radio frequency waves. He talked about aliens. He talked about a lot of things that a normal person would deem a JCat move, right? But I'm not calling him that, but I'm saying these were the type of conversations, and he truly believed what he believed. And who are you or me to tell that man that his beliefs were wrong? They were out of the ordinary and an extraordinary story to listen to, especially in high depth in real life in HD, but it was his story and he's going to tell it. And so I could understand him moving in with his grandfather, his uncle's old lady, and his grandfather's living girlfriend. It was pretty different from what he was used to being on his own. And so now he's around a whole bunch of different people he doesn't know. And him being an untrusting person, he probably didn't trust too much his environment or his situation. He loved his grandfather. He knew his grandfather loved him, but he didn't trust the situation. And there was a lot, according to what I've heard from family and to the stories that are put out there, there's a little bit of truth in everything. Now, the district attorney says that he was acting erratic the day he was killed, that he was yelling at cars that were passing by, yelling at people on the streets, civilians, having erratic episodes and behavior, which we all know little Toro did have from time to time, and that he was making threatening gestures towards his own grandfather, and there was an altercation that happened. Now, according to family members who I talked to, his grandfather was hospitalized. His grandfather was put into a self-induced coma. And it wasn't because little Toro hit him or snatched him up or manhandled him or anything. It was because little Toro and his uncle got into some type of fight. Now, I could understand his uncle not being used to little Toro. He had just met him himself. Let's give both sides a shake, right? Just meeting someone, and anyone who's ever been around little Toro, I'll tell you guys, because I have, it was different. It was hard to understand. I think I had a little bit of more understanding just because I had talked to him several times prior to me meeting him. Also, I had heard stories. Also, I had done time with guys who were 5150, who were actually J-Cats in prison, who needed medication, who were off their medication, who were just different, right? They were slow motion, or they had these outlandish thoughts that they truly believed. So me being around him was pretty normal. Like I get where he was coming from. I didn't blame him. You know, I would never play the blame game. It was just kind of like, hey, bro, I'm going to go ahead and bounce, right? Type shit. And so I could understand his uncle and them living in the same household, not being able to adjust to little Toro's attitude and his mood swings, right? And for whatever reason that day, there was an argument. And little Toro was seen on the streets yelling at people, yelling at cars. Now, was little Toro in the right trying to justify his actions? Because according to what I've been told, he believed that there was some bad things happening in that home. He believed that his grandfather was being taken advantage of, was being robbed, that his bank card was being utilized. Now, there's people that say on the other side that it was little Toro, in fact, that was doing that, was robbing his grandfather, was using his debit card to purchase things. And then there's the other side that says little Toro actually accused his uncle of doing it. I don't think we're ever going to know the true story. I don't think we're ever going to know if that was the case. One thing I do know is the district attorney did not see Toro's side as the truth. They actually seen the uncle's side as the truth. And as of yesterday, have decided to drop the whole case, meaning no one will be charged. No one will be held accountable. No justice will be served for the death of little Toro, the Northern California rapper. According to their story, little Toro was being very erratic, was yelling at everybody in the streets, cars that were passing by, and did run up in the home and, of course, allegedly tried to hurt the grandfather as well as his uncle, to which his uncle chased him from the home. Little Toro returned. Now, there is footage. There is ring camera footage that hasn't been released that I'm aware of, that little Toro could see little Toro going outside, pacing a little bit, screaming for help, you know, allegedly, and then returning back to the porch of the home where the confrontation ensued and little Toro was stabbed to death. Now, when this happened, immediately you would think that the uncle would be at least charged, arrested. He was never arrested, never charged, was talked to. His girlfriend was talked to, or his wife. The grandfather, I guess, in the struggle, tried to stop because it's his son and his grandson fighting, and did get hurt, was taken to the hospital and was placed in an induced coma, to which he's now fine. He's out of it. And a lot of speculation was going around that little Toro had physically assaulted his own grandfather and placed him in that coma. I'm here to tell you, I don't know what is true and what is not, but according to his family members, that is not the truth. Now, we're talking about family members that are his first cousins that share the same grandfather. So according to what they told me, their grandfather was all right. It didn't go down like that. the grandfather did try to intervene, and in doing so, he bumped his head. And him being old and in the situation, and you can only understand the trauma, man, of witnessing his grandson being stabbed by his son off the front porch in the front of the yard. In any case, little Toro met a very drastic, traumatic, crazy demise. But I'm not going to sit here and say it's something we didn't see coming. I thought it would be more so with rival gang members, with people he disrespected or people he felt were disrespecting him. I felt that little Toro might even be the one to do the unaliving on someone just based on his attitude and his situation, right? But his situational awareness took him to a different level that day, took him to confrontation with his own family. And it's bad when it's a domestic issue and it's your own family, right? But in the words of his uncle, he had to put down a stray dog. Now, that's a harsh reality. It's harsh, but when you have a rabid animal or someone that you feel is a danger to you and to those around you, then you have to do what you have to do. I'm not sitting here condoning the death of little Toro or making haste of it. It sucks. It sucks that it was done by his own family. But I think based upon the story that his uncle was able to tell and witnesses, including little Toro's grandfather and the women that were present, the district attorney decided they didn't have enough. Now, is there a racial situation here? I will say that his uncle is white, half white. Concord is a very heavily populated community of Caucasian. So there was people that was actually saying, his own family members that were saying, hey, man, he ain't going to be charged. That dude ain't going to be charged, bro. It's a white community, white cops, white man. Little Toro was aggressive. He was Puerto Rican, Mexican. Everyone knew his story. His story was well documented. Like, nothing's going to go far in this case. And it didn't. I'm not saying the racial element played key into this. I'm just saying that whatever story that was told to the detectives and district attorney, they decided it wasn't enough to charge this man. And so as of today and forever, man, he will not be charged. He got away scot-free with this murder. Now, there was a story that was told to me by little Toro's homeboy that him and another friend actually went to his grandfather's house about a few days after this murder occurred. This guy was literally in the front yard pulling weeds, the aggressor, right? In this case, the uncle. And they approached him and asked, what happened? They were pretty civil in their conversation. He told them I had to put a fucking rabid dog down. He had scars on his hands, on his knuckles, bandages that looked like he was in a altercation. And that's just a story that was told to me. Whether that's truth or not, I'm just saying what they told me. But it's pretty crazy to think that little Toro will get no justice. He has children. He has a family that I'm sure wanted to see justice being done. But in this case, this is one of the few cases where they don't see enough relevant evidence to say it wasn't self-defense, and it's substantiated by his statements. Maybe, a lot of people that support little Toro, a lot of people that rock with him want to believe that he was the hero in this case, that he was just trying to save his grandfather from being robbed by his uncle. But I mean, I'm sure the detectives, the district attorney, and everyone did their due diligence and gave due process and did what they had to do. And at the end of the day, they came with the conclusion that little Toro was the aggressor and he was going to hurt his own family. And so that's what they're running with. Anyways, with that being said, I just wanted to give you the update. It's breaking news, man. Little Toro's aggressor, the uncle, will not be charged. All cases, all charges are dropped. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I honestly and truly believe in. And that's the betterment of all people, man. Again, I'm not here to choose sides. I had an interaction with little Toro, man. I understand how aggressive he could be. I understand also how real he could be. So hopefully this closes the chapter on his life, man, and he's able to rest in peace. And hopefully people are able to move on and understand that shit just happens. This video is sponsored by Vario Liquors out there in Turlock, California. If you're ever in the Turlock area, man, I want you to pull up to the Vario and get you something cold to drink. Also by Sticks and Stones Yard Service out there in Tucson, Arizona. If you're in the Tucson area and you need someone to pull up, man, go support your small local raza business and call Sticks and Stones, man. A big special birthday shout out to my primo, Sniper, A-Town. You know what it is. Happy birthday, primo. I love you, man. And that's just what it is. This is the gun. Bang, bang.